Chris Paul. Chris Paul was waived by the Phoenix Suns, and I don't know what their plan is at all. Like the Phoenix Suns went from being, obviously they fire Monty Williams and now they're waiving Chris Paul. So, he could come back if he clears waivers, but I don't know what the situation is. And I put in the show notes, uh, just, because we have Pistons fan and myself and then a Bucks fan and Seth. I put in the show notes, what do we think about one of our teams landing Chris Paul? So I don't know how the waiver wire works in the NBA. I'm assuming it's like, there's some sort of hierarchy, but I don't know if it's based on record or some other thingamabob. I don't know how much of it works. But I thought it was kind of interesting given, the Suns went, and crapped the bed again, but not really Chris Paul's fault. He got hurt once again. And now you have, a few situations that he could find himself in. I look at, even I know this is crazy, but I look at the Pistons and it's like, well, it's a young team and they're looking for a vet, and it's your former coach who you probably really like. I wouldn't totally rule out the Pistons as a possible landing spot. Now, of course, Chris Paul is looking to compete for a championship. So I don't think I think in that regard, he would say, no, I would, as much as he would like to play again for Monty Williams, he probably is thinking, he's only got, 2, maybe 3 more years in his career before he calls it quits. He's probably thinking about a team like the Boston Celtics, or I put this in the show notes, maybe the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't know. I don't know about salary cap situation. I don't know about spending. I don't know about any of that. I'm just talking about fits. I'm talking about, who makes the most sense. What teams would be interesting? And I think the Milwaukee Bucks would be a really interesting fit. Team needs another good player to kind of put some of the pressure off of Giannis. I think Chris Paul's still got a lot of basketball, or maybe not a lot of basketball, but he's still got basketball skill. He's still a threat to go off on a team. Now, obviously, there's injury concerns and age concerns and, choking in the playoffs concerns. But, I think the Bucks could be an interesting fit. I think what's most possible, though, is probably the Celtics, which not my favorite choice. But, he would be a vet in that room of players who need that leadership and that example, because Jason Tatum, he's really not that guy. He's really not a leader for that team. And Jaylen Brown certainly is not a leader. And Marcus Smart is Marcus average intelligence when it comes to leadership. And yeah, I think it would be an interesting fit for sure. As far as whether it would work out, I'm kind of skeptical. I like Chris Paul as a player, I guess. Like, he's a fine player, but he just sort of bothers me with how much he loses in the playoffs, in that, I think he's lost 2-0 leads 5 times more than any other NBA player. And I know people will say, well, he got hurt, or, he had to play on the Hornets or what, like he was on a bad team, whatever, or he wasn't even the best player, or what have you. My thing is, nobody else has done that. It's just you. You're on an island. And whether or not you're 100% at fault, or 50% or 25% or 1% or no percent, that sort of thing does kind of weigh on people, or it weighs on your mind if you're a player, right? Because you're thinking, oh, here we go. Here goes again. Just like every other time, we're going to blow it. Something's going to happen. I'm going to get hurt. I'm going to, not show up. I'm going to play poorly. And obviously, he's at the point in his physicality where he probably is more prone to getting hurt. And he can't help it. He's close to 40 years old. He's closer to 40 than he is to 20. So it sucks because, it's a very large possibility that he retires without a championship. He'd be another all-time great player who doesn't end up winning a ring, and that severely harms. I mean, I don't really like to get into the like legacy thing. I look at players like, what kind of a player were you statistically speaking, and just how much did you win? And that sort of thing is like, well, it's going to affect his legacy, obviously. And having no championship affects his legacy, just like it affects, Charles Barkley's legacy or Karl Malone's legacy. It affects players' legacies, no doubt. I just don't really. I still look at players and I'm like, this guy's an all-time great. I mean, you're not gonna, if he won one championship, would that change things? Maybe. Honestly, it's almost better now that I'm thinking about it. It's almost better to win no championships than to just win one. And the reason I feel for that is because if you win just one championship, then you're just a one-hit wonder, right? You're just, oh, whatever. You only got one. You're not even that good. How many players have gotten multiple? It's like, if you win none, then it's like, oh, well, what could have been? They were so good, they just got unlucky. Whereas once you get to the one, like the narrative changes. It's like, oh, you only got one. You just got to, like, if Giannis only ends up winning the one championship, guarantee you that's going to be he won the 1 year, but who cares, right? I mean, it's like Aaron Rodgers in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers, one of the all-time great quarterbacks, and that pains me as a Lions fan to have to say that. One of the all-time great quarterbacks. He's won one Super Bowl, and that definitely affects his legacy, especially considering that he's had multiple playoff failings, and the same thing would apply with Chris Paul, whether it's blowing leads or just not showing up. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting little spin with Chris Paul, and being cleared. I was a little shocked by that because I figure if you're the Suns, you're not in the business necessarily of getting rid of anybody. You're in the business of probably adding some pieces. You already replaced your coach. I don't know. I guess I was surprised by that. But what are you gonna do?